You're not as free as you think. You're just well-behaved. Right now, parts of your life are being quietly dictated by people who won't live with the consequences. Your career, your routines, even the way you speak, all subtly shaped by an invisible audience you've never actually met. And here's the uncomfortable question. If they disappeared tomorrow, would you still choose the same life? Most people won't admit this, but deep down, they're not living. They're performing, adjusting, editing, seeking approval like it's oxygen. And the more they chase it, the more control they give away. There's an old, almost unsettling observation power. Doesn't announce itself. It slips in through habits, through small compromises, through that constant question. What will they think? Ask it often enough, and eventually, it's no longer your life you're living. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because what I'm about to show you isn't about rebellion, arrogance, or becoming cold. It's something far more dangerous and far more liberating. It's the shift that separates people who quietly build their own path from those who spend their entire lives waiting for permission. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So before you click away thinking this is another, just be yourself, speech pause for a second. Because the real problem isn't that you care what people think. It's that you've built your identity around it. And that comes at a cost most people only realize far too late. In this video, we're going to break down a philosophy often misunderstood, softened, or completely ignored, one that exposes a brutal truth about human behavior. When you live to please everyone, you slowly lose the ability to choose anything for yourself. More importantly, I'll show you how to take that control back without becoming the villain in your own story, even if, to some people, it might look that way. Number 1. It starts quietly, not with a big decision, but with a small hesitation. You're about to say what you really think, and then you soften it. You're about to take a risk, and then you delay it. Not because it's wrong, but because somewhere in the back of your mind, there's a room full of people watching, judging, waiting, and without noticing, you adjust. That's how it begins, not with control forced onto you, but with control you hand over, piece by piece. Most men don't realize this is happening. They think they're being strategic, diplomatic, smart. But look closer, you're not choosing, you're negotiating your life with people who have no stake in it. Their approval becomes the gatekeeper. And here's the part that stings, they're inconsistent, emotional, distracted. The same person who applauds you today will question you tomorrow, not because you changed, but because they did. And now you're stuck recalibrating again and again and again. That's not living, that's performing under unstable lighting. I've seen this play out in ways that are almost embarrassing once you notice it. A guy stays in a job he hates for years because it looks good. Every morning, he wakes up tired, not physically, but mentally dulled, like something inside him is being slowly numbed. He tells himself it's temporary. It never is. Or the one who doesn't approach the woman he actually wants, not because he can't, but because rejection would bruise the image he's built. So he settles, and then wonders why nothing feels real. You don't need a dramatic failure to ruin your life. Just enough small compromises, stacked over time. Here's the brutal truth most people won't say out loud. The crowd doesn't even care about you the way you think. They're too busy managing their own insecurities, their own image, their own survival. That spotlight you feel on you, it's mostly in your head. But the consequences, those are real. Because while you're hesitating, adjusting, waiting for the right reaction, time is moving without you. There's a pattern among men who actually take control, and it's uncomfortable to admit. They don't wait to be understood. They don't explain every move. They decide, and then they move. Not recklessly, but cleanly, without that constant need for reassurance. And because of that, they become polarizing. Some people respect them, others resent them. But here's what matters. They're not stuck. They're not paused in someone else's approval loop. Chasing validation is like trying to grab your own shadow. The faster you move toward it, the more it slips. And eventually, you start shaping yourself just to catch something that was never meant to be held. That's where men lose their edge. Not in failure, but in constant adjustment. In becoming acceptable instead of becoming dangerous in their own direction. And if you're honest with yourself, you already know where this shows up in your life. That decision you've been postponing. That move you keep justifying but never making. That version of you that only exists in your head because you're still asking for permission to become him. At some point, you either accept being misunderstood or you accept being controlled. There isn't a comfortable middle. Number 2, pay attention to this, because it's where most men get quietly drained without ever realizing why. Not through failure, but through obedience disguised as virtue. You were trained to believe that putting yourself last makes you respectable, that saying yes makes you reliable, that sacrificing your own needs makes you a good man. Sounds noble on the surface, until you look at the outcome. You're tired, stretched thin, slightly resentful, and you don't even feel like yourself anymore. That's not virtue. That's slow erosion. There's a difference most people never learn between being generous and being available. Generosity comes from strength. Availability comes from lack of boundaries. And the world will always prefer the second one because it's easier to use. Think about it. The moment you start saying no, even calmly, even respectfully, people shift. Their tone changes. You'll hear things like, "You've changed. You're different now," as if your growth is some kind of betrayal. It isn't. It just means you've stopped being convenient. I remember a guy who prided himself on always being there for everyone, the dependable one. Always answering calls, always fixing problems, always adjusting his schedule. On paper, he looked solid. In reality, he was exhausted. He hadn't trained in months, his work was slipping, his mind was constantly foggy. But he kept saying yes, because saying no felt wrong. One day he snapped, not loudly, just internally. He realized something uncomfortable. The people who demanded the most from him weren't the ones building him. They were feeding off the version of him that had no limits. That's the trap. You think self-sacrifice makes you respected, but what it often does is signal that your time, your energy, your focus are negotiable. And once people sense that, consciously or not, they will test it, push it, expand it. Not out of evil intent, but because human nature follows access. The more you give without resistance, the more is expected. Until eventually, you're not choosing anymore, you're reacting. Strategic selfishness flips that dynamic. It's not about becoming cold for the sake of it, it's about becoming selective, controlled. You decide where your energy goes, not based on guilt, not based on pressure, but based on alignment. That means saying no when it costs you socially. It means protecting your time even when it disappoints someone. It means investing in yourself before you try to impress anyone else. And yes, some people will not like that version of you. That's part of the price. Here's where it gets real. When you constantly ignore your own needs, something starts to build under the surface. Frustration, then irritation, then quiet resentment. You start doing things for people while internally pulling away from them, smiling on the outside, disconnected on the inside. That's how relationships rot without any obvious conflict. Not because you're giving too little, but because you've been giving from a place of depletion. The men who operate at a higher level understand a simple principle. You can't build anything meaningful while running on empty. Not a career, not a body, not a family. Strength requires preservation, and preservation requires boundaries. They don't explain it, they don't apologize for it, they just operate that way. Their energy is directed, not scattered. And once you start living like that, something shifts. You become less available, but more valuable. Less reactive, but more intentional. People may call it selfish, but what they're really reacting to is the fact that they no longer have automatic access to you. At the end of the day, it comes down to a decision most men avoid making. Either you manage your own energy, or someone else will manage it for you. There's no neutral ground. Number 3. Here's where most men get trapped without even noticing. They start protecting an image instead of building a self. It looks subtle from the outside, almost respectable. You become that guy. Reliable, composed, well put together. People nod when your name comes up. But behind that image, there's a quiet tension. Because you're no longer acting freely, you're maintaining a version of yourself that others expect. And the moment you feel that pressure to stay consistent with how you're perceived, you've already lost leverage. Reputation is external. It lives in other people's heads, shifting, distorting, mutating depending on their mood, their jealousy, their bias. Identity is internal. It's what remains when nobody's watching, when there's nothing to prove. Most men spend years polishing the first and neglecting the second, and then wonder why they feel hollow when they're alone. Because an image can't carry weight, it can't guide decisions, it can't anchor you when things fall apart. You see this play out in real time. A guy builds a clean reputation, always agreeable, always politically safe, always saying the right thing. He becomes liked, even admired. But then comes a moment where he needs to act against that image, speak directly, take a risk, break expectations, and he freezes, not because he doesn't know what to do, but because he's afraid of damaging how he's seen. So he hesitates, edits himself, delays, and that single moment of hesitation costs him more than any criticism ever could. That's the price of being controlled by perception. Social media just made this pathology louder. Now it's not just your circle, it's an invisible audience. You post, you wait, you measure reactions. You start shaping your thoughts before you even express them. You don't ask, is this true? You ask, how will this land? And slowly, without noticing, your voice stops being yours. It becomes optimized, filtered, safe. That's not expression, that's performance. Here's the part most people won't admit. People don't actually respect perfection. They respond to clarity, to someone who knows exactly who they are and moves accordingly, even if it creates friction. The man who is slightly polarizing, slightly misunderstood, but internally consistent, carries more weight than the one who is universally liked but internally fragmented. Because one is real, the other is managed. There's a quiet experiment you can run in your own head. Imagine everything people think about you disappears overnight. No labels, no past impressions, no reputation attached to your name. Just you, your skills, your habits, your decisions. What's left? For most men, that question is uncomfortable because they realize how much of their confidence was borrowed from perception, not built from substance. And once you see that, something shifts. You stop trying to control how you're interpreted because you understand it's a losing game. Someone will misread you no matter how precise you are. Someone will project their own insecurities onto your actions. Someone will reduce you to a version that fits their narrative. That's unavoidable. The only thing you actually control is whether you stay aligned with yourself while it happens. The men who operate with real power don't waste energy chasing a flawless image. They focus on being solid underneath it. Their standards are internal, not negotiated in public. And ironically, that's what creates a reputation that actually holds, not because they tried to build it, but because it's a byproduct of consistency. At some point, you have to decide what you're protecting, how you're seen, or who you actually are. Because trying to maintain both will split you in half. Number 4, comfort doesn't trap you with chains, it sedates you. It keeps you just satisfied enough to stay, just distracted enough not to question, just safe enough to never move. And that's how most men lose years of their life without a single dramatic mistake, just a sequence of reasonable decisions that slowly shrink them. You see it in the man who chose stability over possibility. He tells himself it was the mature move, the responsible path. Good salary, predictable routine, no real friction. But watch him closely. There's a dullness in his eyes, a kind of quiet resignation. He scrolls at night, thinking about things he could have done, paths he almost took, conversations he never had. Nothing is collapsing, but nothing is expanding either. That's the danger. When life becomes tolerable, it stops being questioned. There's a lie most people buy into early, that safety equals control. It doesn't. It just means you've accepted a controlled environment. That secure job can erase you in a single meeting. That relationship where you avoid conflict to keep peace, it's not stable, it's fragile. You're just delaying the moment where truth forces its way in. And that silence you keep to avoid tension. It's not wisdom, it's self-erasure in slow motion. Men who operate differently understand something most avoid facing. Growth always feels like risk from the inside. There's no clean moment where you feel ready, no signal that guarantees success. You move while uncertain, you act while incomplete, you decide without full clarity. And that discomfort most people run from, that's exactly where your leverage is built, because the crowd won't go there. They hesitate, overthink, wait for consensus. That's why they stay average. Think about a moment you already recognize. You knew what you had to do, but you paused. Maybe it was leaving something that no longer fit. Maybe it was stepping into something that exposed you. And instead of moving, you rationalized. You told yourself, not yet. I need more time. This isn't the right moment. But if you're honest, it wasn't about timing. It was about fear. Not of failure, but of consequence. Of being seen differently. Of losing comfort. There's a pattern in men who actually shift their position in life. They accept short-term instability as the price of long-term control. They're willing to look uncertain, to be questioned, to step into environments where they're not the most competent person in the room. That's calculated risk. Not reckless, not blind, but deliberate movement into discomfort because they understand that staying still is the real loss. And here's the part most won't say directly. Every time you choose comfort over expansion, you reinforce a version of yourself that avoids pressure. You train your mind to retreat instead of advance. Over time, that compounds. Your world gets smaller. Your decisions get safer. Your identity gets weaker. Not because you failed, but because you never tested your edge. The men you see operating at a higher level didn't get there by waiting to feel secure. They moved before it made sense to others. They made decisions that looked irrational from the outside, but aligned internally. And yes, they lost things along the way. Stability, approval, sometimes entire environments, but what they gained was something most people never experience: autonomy. At some point, you have to confront a simple reality. The life you actually want sits on the other side of decisions that feel uncomfortable, exposed, and uncertain. There's no version of that path that feels safe while you're stepping into it. And if you keep choosing what feels controlled in the moment, you'll end up controlled in the long run. Number 5. Watch what happens the moment you make a decision that doesn't fit the script people have for you. The questions start subtle at first, then sharper. Why would you do that? Are you sure? Have you thought this through? And before you even realize it, you're explaining, justifying, building a case like you're on trial for your own life. That's the shift most men miss. You moved from deciding to defending. And once you're defending, you've already given up ground. It feels harmless, even polite, to explain yourself. You tell yourself you're being respectful, transparent, mature. But look closer. Explanation, when it becomes compulsive, is just approval seeking dressed in better language. You're not informing them, you're trying to stabilize their perception of you. You want them to nod, to agree, to validate that your move makes sense. And the more uncertain they sound, the more you talk. You add context, details, reasoning, hoping at some point they'll say, yeah, that's fair. That moment becomes your permission slip. I've watched this play out in ways that are almost painful to witness. A man decides to change direction, leave a job, cut off a draining relationship, start something uncertain. The decision is clean in his head. Then he shares it with the wrong person. Instantly, doubt is introduced. Not because the decision is weak, but because the other person can't see beyond their own limitations. And now instead of moving, he's stuck explaining. One conversation turns into five turn into weeks, and eventually the momentum dies. Not from failure, but from dilution. Here's the part that most people won't say directly. People who constantly question your decisions aren't always looking for understanding. They're testing your certainty. Consciously or not, they're probing for hesitation, and if they find it, they push. Not necessarily out of malice, but because human nature respects clarity and exploits ambiguity. The more you explain, the more it signals that your decision is still negotiable. Men who operate with control understand a different rule. Not everything deserves explanation. They choose when to speak and when to stay silent. And that silence isn't insecurity, it's containment. It sends a message without words. This is decided. There's nothing to negotiate here. They don't rush to fill the space when someone questions them. They let the discomfort sit. And that discomfort does something most words can't. It establishes frame. There's a distinction that matters here. Sharing versus justifying. Sharing is selective, intentional, done with people who've earned access to your thinking. Justifying is reactive, scattered, offered to anyone who challenges you. One builds connection, the other drains authority. If you don't draw that line, you end up explaining your life to people who have no responsibility for it. Think about how much energy you've burned in that loop, rehearsing conversations in your head, replaying arguments, trying to find the perfect way to make someone understand. hours, days even. And for what? Most of the time, they walk away unchanged. Because it was never about your logic, it was about their perspective. And you can't argue someone out of a lens they're committed to seeing through. There's a quiet power in deciding and moving without broadcasting every step. Not secrecy, just precision. You speak when it serves the outcome, not when it soothes someone else's discomfort. And when you stop over-explaining, something shifts immediately. You feel it. Less scattered, less reactive, more anchored. Your decisions start carrying weight, not because you argued for them, but because you stood by them. At some point, you have to accept something most men resist. Your life is not a group discussion. The more you treat it like one, the less control you keep. Silence, used correctly, isn't absence. It's authority. Number 6. There's a moment most men try to avoid because it feels like betrayal, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet decision where you realize that if you move forward, someone will be disappointed. And that's where the internal conflict starts. You tell yourself you're loyal, that you care, that you don't want to hurt anyone. But underneath that, there's something else. You're afraid of the shift, afraid of no longer being the version of you they're comfortable with. Every environment you're in has an unspoken contract. Your family has one, your friends have one, your relationship has one. It's not written, but it's understood. Stay consistent, stay predictable, don't outgrow the role we assigned you. The moment you break that pattern, tension appears. Not because you're wrong, but because you've disrupted their expectation. And most men interpret that tension as a signal to retreat, to soften, to adjust back into place. I've seen it too many times. A man starts changing, he gets serious about his work, his body, his direction. He becomes more focused, less available, more intentional with his time. At first, people joke about it. Then they question it. Then they subtly resist it. You've changed. You don't have time for us anymore. You're taking this too seriously. It sounds casual, but it carries weight. Because now he's forced to choose. Go back to being accepted, or keep moving and risk being isolated. Most choose to go back. Not because they lack ambition, but because they're wired to maintain connection. That's the real tension. Your vision demands separation, but your conditioning demands belonging. And if you don't see that clearly, you'll keep sacrificing the future you want just to preserve the version of you they recognize. Here's the part that cuts deeper. When you stay loyal to expectations that limit you, you don't become a better man, you become a more manageable one. Easier to predict, easier to control, easier to keep in place. You start making decisions not based on where you need to go, but based on what keeps the environment stable. And slowly, without noticing, your life stops being a direction and becomes a negotiation. There's a micro moment that exposes this clearly. You're about to make a move, something that matters, and before you act, a face pops into your mind. Someone whose reaction you're already calculating. That hesitation right there, that's where your vision gets filtered. That's where it gets diluted. Not destroyed in one big moment, but weakened over time until it no longer demands anything from you. Men who operate differently understand something most never accept. Growth requires friction with people who preferred the old version of you. Not because they're bad, but because your evolution removes their comfort. And when comfort is threatened, people react. Sometimes with concern, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with subtle pressure disguised as care. But the effect is the same, it pulls you back. Choosing your vision means accepting that some relationships will shift, some will fade, and some will break entirely. That's the cost no one wants to acknowledge. You can't expand and remain fully compatible with environments built around a smaller version of you. It's not cruelty, it's alignment. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The people who truly respect you don't need you to stay small to stay connected. They might not understand every move, but they don't try to contain you. The ones who push back the hardest are usually the ones who benefited the most from your lack of direction. At some point, you have to make a clean decision. Protect your vision or protect people's expectations of you. Because trying to hold both will split your focus and stall your movement. One builds your life. The other preserves an image of you that was never meant to last. Number 7. At some point, you realize the game was never about being understood. It was about being acceptable. And those are not the same thing. Acceptable means predictable, easy to label, easy to place in a box people feel comfortable with. Understood requires depth, nuance, attention, and most people don't have the patience for that. So what do they do instead? They simplify you, reduce you, translate you into something that fits their worldview. And if you've been shaping yourself to avoid that, you've been negotiating your identity down to something manageable. You've already felt this, even if you didn't name it. That moment where you hold back what you really think because it might come across too strong. When you tone down your ambition so it doesn't sound arrogant. When you hide your struggles because you don't want to look weak. You start editing yourself in real time, filtering your words, adjusting your tone, not to be clearer, but to be safer. And the more you do that, the further you drift from who you actually are. Here's the part that hits most men when they finally see it. No matter how precise you are, someone will still get you wrong. You can explain your intentions perfectly, choose your words carefully, stay calm, stay logical, and they will still interpret it through their own lens, their insecurities, their past, their limitations. That's the filter, not you. And once something passes through that filter, it becomes their version of you, not the real one. I've watched a man set a simple boundary, nothing aggressive, nothing disrespectful, just a clear line, and instantly he was labeled difficult. Another one decided to focus on his own goals, reduced his availability, stopped entertaining things that wasted his time. Suddenly he became cold. Same behavior, different observers, same outcome, misinterpretation. Not because they were wrong, but because people react to how your actions make them feel, not what your actions actually mean. And this is where most men fold. Not in confrontation, but in perception. They start correcting themselves, over-explaining, softening their stance, trying to repair how they're seen. But every time you do that, you're not clarifying, you're conceding. You're telling the world that your identity is flexible depending on who's watching. That's how you lose coherence. The men who operate with real control accept something uncomfortable early. Being misunderstood is not a glitch, it's the cost of being defined. If you're clear, if you have standards, if you move with direction, you will create friction. Some will respect it, others will resist it. But at least it's real. The alternative is far worse. Being so neutral, so adjusted, so inoffensive that no one reacts to you at all. No resistance, no respect, just indifference. Think about the men you actually remember, not the agreeable ones, not the ones who tried to please everyone, but the ones who stood firm, even when it made them unpopular. They weren't universally liked, but they were unmistakable. There was no confusion about where they stood. That clarity is what creates presence. Not perfection, but consistency. Once you stop trying to control how you're perceived, a different kind of freedom appears. You move cleaner, you decide faster, you speak without rehearsing every possible reaction in your head. You let people interpret, and you keep moving anyway. Some will get it, most won't, and that stops mattering. Because at the end of it, the choice is simple. Even if it's not easy, be understood by everyone and owned by them, or be misunderstood by many and owned by yourself. Number 8. Most men don't collapse because of pressure. They collapse because of access. Too many people, too much noise, too many demands pulling in different directions until there's nothing left that's actually yours. And the dangerous part is it doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like being needed, like being connected, like being a good man. But look closer, because what you call connection is often just constant intrusion. You've been conditioned to be available, to reply fast, to show up, to maintain every link no matter how thin or draining it becomes. There's this unspoken rule that if someone reaches out, you owe them your time. And if you don't respond, if you take space, if you delay, suddenly there's tension. You're seen as distant, different, even arrogant. So what do most men do? They comply. They keep the doors open. And slowly, without noticing, their energy gets fragmented across people who don't build them. I've seen this pattern in men who had potential, real direction, real focus, but no boundaries. One call turns into an hour. One favor turns into an expectation. One quick message turns into a daily drain. By the end of the week, they've spent more energy reacting than creating. And then they wonder why they feel stuck, why their progress stalls. It's not lack of discipline, it's lack of control over who gets access. Here's the part that shifts everything. Proximity is power. The closer someone is to you, the more influence they have over your state, your focus, your decisions. And most men give that proximity away for free. No filter, no structure, no awareness. They let people sit front row in their life simply because they've been there for a long time. But history doesn't equal relevance. Just because someone had access to you before doesn't mean they deserve it now. There's a man I remember who started pulling back, not dramatically, just enough to create space. Fewer replies, more delayed responses, less availability for things that didn't align. At first, people pushed. They questioned it, tried to pull him back into the old pattern. But he didn't explain, didn't overcorrect. He just stayed consistent. And something interesting happened. The people who respected him adjusted. The ones who didn't revealed themselves quickly. What looked like distance from the outside was actually clarity. Strategic distance isn't about cutting people off or becoming isolated. It's about structure, layers. Not everyone gets the same version of you. Some get access to your time. Fewer get access to your attention. Very few get access to your inner world. That's not fake, that's disciplined. Because intimacy, real proximity, costs energy. And if you don't regulate that cost, you end up overexposed and underpowered. There's also something most men don't want to admit. Some people benefit from you being accessible, from you being reachable, interruptible, easy to pull into their problems, not because they're evil, but because it serves them. And the moment you reduce that access, they feel it. That's where the guilt comes in. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you're being too harsh, too distant. But that guilt isn't truth. It's conditioning. You've been trained to equate availability with value. The reality is simpler and colder. Your energy is finite. Every conversation, every interaction, every demand either builds you or drains you. There's no neutral. And if you don't decide where it goes, it will be decided for you. Slowly, subtly, until there's nothing left for your own direction. At some point, you have to accept a principle most avoid. You cannot be fully accessible and fully focused at the same time. One cancels the other, and the men who understand this don't announce it, don't justify it, they just operate with distance where it's needed. Because in the end, it's not about pushing people away, it's about no longer giving everyone a front row seat to a life they didn't build. Number 9. Look at your week without lying to yourself. Not what you planned, but what actually happened. Hours disappear into things you didn't choose, conversations you didn't need, obligations you didn't question. And it doesn't feel like theft, because it's socially approved. It's dressed as responsibility, as loyalty, as being on top of things. But strip the labels away, and it becomes uncomfortable. You're trading pieces of your life for other people's convenience. Time is the one currency that doesn't recycle. Money comes back, energy can be rebuilt, reputation can be repaired, but an hour is gone the moment it's spent. And most men spend it like it's renewable. They give it away casually, almost unconsciously, saying yes to things that don't move them forward, just to avoid a moment of tension. That's the quiet exchange happening every day, your time for their comfort. You've felt it before, even if you didn't call it out. That meeting that drags past its purpose, that phone call that should have ended 10 minutes ago, that plan you agreed to just because saying no felt heavier than showing up. In the moment it seems small, but stack those moments over weeks, months, years, and you start to see the pattern. It's not one big decision that drains your life. It's 1,000 small concessions. There's a man who wakes up early with intent, clear plan, sharp focus. By midday, that clarity is gone. Not because he lacks discipline, but because his time has been hijacked. Messages, requests, interruptions. Each one feels minor, harmless, but together they fragment him. By the end of the day, he's busy, exhausted, but nothing meaningful moved. That's the trap. Motion without direction, activity without progress. Here's the part most people won't say directly. When you allow someone to take your time without resistance, you're teaching them how to treat you. You're showing them that your schedule is flexible, that your priorities can be adjusted, that your focus is negotiable. And once that pattern is established, it doesn't correct itself. It expands. Because people don't naturally protect your time, you do. There's also a deeper layer most men avoid facing. Saying yes when you mean no isn't kindness. It's avoidance. You're avoiding discomfort, avoiding conflict, avoiding being seen as difficult. But every time you do that, you create internal friction. You know you shouldn't be there, shouldn't be doing that, but you are. That quiet misalignment builds. And over time, it turns into frustration, then resentment. Not towards others, but towards yourself. Men who operate differently see time for what it is: raw life. Not something to manage efficiently, but something to protect with precision. They don't fill their days to feel productive. They structure them to stay aligned. They cut conversations short without over-explaining. They decline without over-justifying. They leave when something no longer serves the direction they're moving in. Not out of disrespect, but out of clarity. And yes, people react to that. They call it selfish, rigid, extreme, because your boundaries force them to adjust. But that reaction is predictable. When you stop being easy to access, you stop being easy to use. And for those who were benefiting from your availability, that shift feels like loss. At some point, you have to face a simple equation. Every hour you give to something that doesn't matter is an hour taken from something that does. There's no neutral exchange. You're either investing or you're leaking. And the uncomfortable truth is this: your life isn't being taken from you in dramatic ways. It's being quietly redistributed, 1 hour at a time, to people and things that never had the right to it in the first place. Number 10. There's a quiet deception most men never question. You think you're chasing success, but you never stop to ask who defined it. You inherited a blueprint without noticing, a script handed to you early, reinforced by everyone around you, polished by culture until it feels like truth. Good job, good money, visible status, the right milestones at the right time. It all sounds solid, structured, respectable. But here's the fracture point. None of it means anything if it doesn't actually belong to you. You can execute that script perfectly and still feel empty, and that's the part no one prepares you for. Because from the outside, it looks like you're winning. You did everything right. You climbed, you built, you achieved. But internally, something is off. There's no weight to it, no real satisfaction, just a constant need to maintain what you've built. And that's when it hits you, quietly, usually late. You've been playing a game you never chose. I've seen men reach positions others admire, titles that sound impressive, lives that photograph well, and still feel disconnected from it all. One of them told me something that stuck. He said, "I did everything I was supposed to do, and I don't even know if I wanted any of it." That's the cost, not failure, misalignment. Winning something that was never yours to begin with. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The moment you start questioning that script, you step outside the frame. And people notice. If your definition of success doesn't match theirs, they don't get curious, they get critical. You don't want the promotion? You're unambitious. You prioritize time over money? You're irresponsible. You choose a quieter life over status? You're settling. They don't see your clarity. They see a threat to their own decisions. So most men don't say it out loud. They adjust. They keep chasing what looks right instead of what feels right. They silence their real preferences because they don't want to deal with the friction. And over time, that creates a gap between the life they're living and the life they actually want. That gap is where dissatisfaction lives. Not loud, not dramatic, just a constant sense that something isn't aligned. There's a moment you can replay in your head right now, when you imagined a life that actually excited you, not impressed others. Maybe it was simpler, maybe it was more intense, maybe it made no sense to anyone else. And then almost immediately, another voice stepped in, practical, cautious, external. That's not realistic, that's not smart. What will people think? And just like that, the idea was buried. Not because it was wrong, but because it didn't fit the template. Men who break out of this don't necessarily choose easier paths. They choose honest ones. They define success in terms that actually move them, even if it costs them approval. They stop measuring themselves against metrics they didn't create. And that shift is dangerous because it forces you to take full responsibility. No more hiding behind expectations, no more blaming the system. If you choose your own definition, you own the outcome. And here's the reality most avoid. Living by your own terms will isolate you at times. It will put you out of sync with people who are still following the script. You won't always be understood, you won't always be supported, but what you gain is something most never experience: alignment. Your actions match your values, your direction matches your intent. There's no internal negotiation. At some point, you have to decide what you're really chasing: a life that looks successful from the outside, or one that actually feels like yours when no one is watching. Because if you don't define success for yourself, it will be defined for you, and you'll spend years climbing a ladder that was never meant to lead anywhere you actually want to go. Here's the part no one says cleanly. This was never about becoming selfish, cold, or detached for the sake of it. That's the surface-level interpretation people use to dismiss it. What this really is control. Control over your direction, your time, your energy, your decisions. And most men don't have it, not because they can't, but because they've been trained to outsource it. To opinions, to expectations, to reactions. You've been living with a compass that doesn't belong to you, and wondering why every path feels slightly off. There's a quiet moment that happens when this starts to click. It's not loud, not cinematic, just a realization that lands heavy. You look at your life, your routines, your choices, and you can trace how many of them were influenced by what others would think. Not forced, not imposed, just subtly guided. That's what makes it dangerous. You don't feel controlled until you try to move differently and feel the resistance. And that resistance doesn't just come from the outside. It hits internally first. Doubt, hesitation, that instinct to explain yourself, to soften your moves, to make them more acceptable. That's the conditioning. That's the part of you that was shaped to maintain harmony instead of direction. And breaking that pattern doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. Like you're stepping out of line. That's how deep it runs. The reality is simple, but not easy to accept. The moment you stop performing, some people will pull back. Not always aggressively, sometimes subtly. Less warmth, more distance, small shifts, and behavior that signal something changed. And they're right. Something did change. You're no longer playing the role they were used to. And for people who benefited from that version of you, that shift feels like loss. I've seen men hesitate right there. They feel that tension and immediately try to fix it. Adjust back, reassure, explain, anything to restore the previous dynamic. And in doing that, they give up the very thing they were starting to build: self-direction, because they chose comfort over alignment. Again. But here's the part you need to face without softening it. If maintaining certain relationships requires you to stay small, stay agreeable, stay predictable, then what you're preserving isn't connection. It's containment. You're being kept in a version of yourself that's easier to manage. And the alternative, it's not clean. It's not smooth. You will be questioned, misread, at times, isolated. You'll have moments where you wonder if you're going too far, if you're becoming something you didn't intend. That's the internal conflict most people never push through. They retreat before the clarity sets in. Because on the other side of that discomfort, something stabilizes. You stop second-guessing every move. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop needing everyone to be on board before you act. Decisions become cleaner, faster, more direct. Not because you became reckless, but because you removed unnecessary interference. And that's when it becomes real. Not motivational, not theoretical, practical. You wake up and your life starts to feel like it's actually yours. Not perfectly controlled, not free from problems, but aligned. There's a difference between chaos you chose and structure you were placed in. One builds you. The other contains you. At the end of it, this comes down to a decision most men delay for years. Whether you're going to keep adjusting yourself to fit into other people's expectations, or start shaping your life around what actually matters to you. There's no middle ground that holds long-term. You either drift, or you direct. And the uncomfortable truth is this: you don't get another version of this life to test it differently. This is it. No rehearsal, no reset, no second pass where you correct what you already knew you should have changed. The question isn't whether you understand all of this. You do. The question is whether you're actually going to move differently because of it.